Welcome to Financial Clarity, the podcast dedicated to helping service-based small business owners achieve financial success. Join us as we demystify financial concepts, get practical tips from seasoned entrepreneurs, and discover strategies to increase profit and value. Hannah Smolinski here. I'm the host of the Financial Clarity podcast, where I connect successful entrepreneurs, financial experts, and leaders in the small business community. Past guests include Steve Kwan, a founder who has a philosophy that doing the right thing not only brings personal satisfaction, but also creates business success. And Lizzie Mintus, a CEO of a recruiting agency that specializes in the gaming industry, who decided to build a company that she actually wanted to work for. So if either of those pique your interest, please go and check out the prior episodes. Today's episode is brought to you by my company, Clara CFO Group. Clara CFO is dedicated to providing financial clarity and profit maximizing solutions to small businesses. The team at Clara CFO are seasoned accounting professionals with a heart for small business. We help growth-minded entrepreneurs thrive through fractional CFO services and financial education. To learn more about Clara CFO Group and how we can help your business, visit claracfo.com. Also, feel free to email me directly, hannah@claracfo.com. Before introducing today's guest, I want to give a big thank you to Nikki Rausch for introducing us. Nikki is the host of the Sales Maven podcast, and she was also a guest on this show a little while ago. She helps make the selling process easier and much more approachable through her relationship-based methodology. If that sounds interesting to you, please go check her out at yoursalesmaven.com. And with that, I'd like to introduce you to today's guest, Melissa Jacobs. Melissa is the CEO and Lead Strategist at Crow Pitcher. She's a growth accelerator with over 20 years of experience increasing revenue for brands like Kleenex and Kotex, who currently works with mid-sized companies as the strategic partner missing from their team. Melissa's clients innovate, reinvent, and grow their businesses without increasing the size of their team or their marketing budget. Melissa, you know I like the sound of that. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me, Hannah.
Yes, I love the idea of not growing marketing budgets. So I'm excited to get into the topic today.
Absolutely.
So, well, Melissa, can you tell us a little bit about what the business is and how you got around to starting your own business?
Absolutely. So as you mentioned, my company is called Crow Pitcher, and it's an innovation and growth consultancy. We work with mid-sized businesses, as you mentioned, to help them increase their revenue and really do that by getting focused and figuring out the best places to spend their time and their energy and their money so that they can grow without adding to that marketing budget in particular. I got started about 2 years ago in my own business after a long career in corporate America, where I learned all the tools of the trade that I use today in my business. And it's been a really great experience to, take all those former experiences in marketing and strategy and innovation roles in the consumer packaged goods business and really apply those same skills with businesses and teams that don't have the luxury of having as many people, as many resources as the big companies have. So it's been a real honor and pleasure to be able to work with my clients over the last couple of years.
That's awesome. So how did you get about to, how did it come about to start your own consultancy? It sounds like if you're working for a big corporate job and doing, the corporate life, that kind of starting your own thing might have been quite a leap. So how did that come about?
Absolutely. It was a bit of a leap. So let's see, about 3 years ago now, my company made the decision, like many do, to relocate my entire function from rural Wisconsin, where I live now and have lived for over 20 years, to downtown Chicago. And while I had enjoyed 2 really great chapters of my career, first starting in the research and innovation department and then moving into the marketing and business leadership world, those 2 chapters really served me well, but it was not in the cards for me to make the relocation. And it just felt like the right time to start chapter 3. And so while the beginning of chapter 3 came a little bit unexpectedly, or maybe a lot unexpectedly, I was really fortunate to be able to have some time to figure out what was next. I have a close friend who had been running her own business for about 4 years at the time, and I've been watching her. And so I knew that for the next chapter of my career, I wanted to really focus in on the strategic side of growing businesses, using data, being more focused, and not work in the execution side. I had done both in my corporate career, and what I was really excited to do was focus in on the piece that I was most excited about, that was sort of my zone of genius, if you will. Mm-hmm. And so while I knew right away that I was going to start chapter 3, I didn't know right away that it was going to be as an entrepreneur. But as I looked at all of my options, I was just really intrigued by the idea of being able to work with a lot of different clients, a lot of different companies, set my own schedule, work at my own pace. And having had that friend that was charting the path in front of me, plus, I won't lie, from a financial perspective, coming off of a corporate career with a relocation, I was fortunate enough to have a severance package. And that gave me some space to take a risk and to try it out. I didn't know if I was going to like it when I started, but I'm glad that I do. And I'm glad that I gave it a shot.
Yeah. I mean, it is such a big leap. I think going from corporate to starting to work, I mean, in creating your own small business is, you're having to think of every function of the business. What do you feel like in that leap has been one of the biggest challenges?
I think, interestingly, two big challenges, if I'll expand that to two. One has been, figuring out how to position myself, even though that's work that I help others do. Doing it for your own business is so difficult. And so that was one thing, and it's evolved a little bit over time. But that's one thing right out of the gate, I think, figuring out how to position myself. And then you mentioned we met through Nikki Rausch. So I've never done sales before.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so business development and sales. And so again, fortunate to have found Nikki and hired her as my coach, and really learning from her through her podcast and her group program, and doing some one-on-one work with her as well. So certainly, learning new skills has been, like sales, has been probably the biggest challenge.
Yeah, I know when I first started, I was so scared of sales. I think it was definitely something that really intimidated me. And I was like, well, the only way I'm going to survive here is if I figure out how to sell this work.
Yep.
But I think it makes a big difference too when you understand that people really do need what you're providing. And I'm sure that you get over that really quickly when you're like, no, I know exactly, like, people need what I'm doing here. So that does make the selling process a lot easier. And that's one of the things that mindsets that kind of Nikki definitely helps with. I think the positioning part is also really interesting. One thing that I noticed as I was looking at your website and even in your bio, you talk about this term like growth accelerator. So I'm sure that that probably needs a little bit of explanation to your audience and understanding that. So can you explain what you mean when you say growth accelerator?
Absolutely. I think of myself as the person who can come in and help a team get clear, get focused, and shut down some of the things that are getting in their way from accelerating the growth that they're able to achieve in their business. And oftentimes that comes from doing less.
Mm.
And so, there's very rarely is there a lack of ideas on how to grow. Typically, there's too many ideas. And so the way that I've experienced both in my corporate life and now with my clients, that sometimes the growth is actually happens fastest when we're able to say no to ideas, when we're able to get down to the top priorities for focusing our time and our money. And it doesn't mean that no is never, right? Sometimes no just means not yet. And so the growth accelerator part comes in with, oftentimes my clients are growing, but not as fast as they want to. And it's helping them see how they might be getting in their own way and clearing out some of, those things that are just cluttering up their time and their money, to allow them to kind of unleash that growth that's inherent in their organization, but they haven't tapped into yet.
Mm. Oh, I love that. I think that I mean, this is in life too, right? You get pulled in so many different directions, but I think with business in particular, there's always another idea. There's always another perspective. There's always somebody who's like, "Oh, have you tried this or have you tried that?" So I imagine that we probably spend a lot of energy just chasing after the next thing or the next thing, when really, usually we should be focused on probably one or two things.
Yeah, there's so much power in being able to make those choices and get focused there. I was just talking to someone else this morning, and I was saying that, if the things that you're choosing to do to spend your time or your energy or money on are, the latest fad or the latest idea you heard from somebody, or even the latest idea that popped into your brain this morning, as soon as the next fad or the next outside idea or the next idea in your brain pops along, there really isn't anything keeping you from switching to that. And when you use a more, disciplined approach or insights-based approach to set a foundation for how to decide what those priorities are, it's a lot easier to withstand those new ideas. The new ideas aren't going to slow down. To your point, they're everywhere. We're bombarded with ideas every day. But if you have, a strong foundation, it's a lot easier to withstand those new ideas. And if you've got a team, that's even more important, right? Because now you're spreading that chance for diverting time, diverting focus across even more people and more ideas.
Yeah, and if you do have a team, I imagine that helps support, like if everybody's really clear on the strategy and a new idea comes to the table, hopefully the team is also there to help support that process of like, does this support the strategy? Or should we not do that? That's what I hope when I get my team involved in strategy. I'm like, I am an ideas person where I'm like, ooh, squirrel, that sounds fun. Um, and even with starting this podcast, I really had to, we changed the strategy of the podcast along the way because the initial idea was to do something completely different with it. But when we really thought about the overall business strategy, that original idea wasn't supporting it. So we had to kind of like shift and focus in what we did. And yeah, so I like the idea of having like the team involved for sure, of let's make sure everybody's on the same page of what we're doing here. Um, I so tell us a little bit about like how you work with clients, because I would imagine too that like you're in Growth Accelerator, you're not working with brand new businesses, correct?
Typically not. Yeah. Typically I'm working with businesses that are a little bit more established, a little bit bigger. Ideal for me is like a marketing VP or a chief marketing officer that has a team. It can be a small team, doesn't have to be a big team. And one of the characteristics that is most common is that nobody on the team is dedicated or focused to the big picture. Everybody is head down, really focused on executing the current marketing plan, including the leader. Typically, they've got bigger ideas. They've got ideas on how they might grow the business even faster. They've got ideas about how they might want to dive into their data deeper. But that's always priority number 2 or 3 or 4 on the list, and it never gets to the top priority. And so when it comes time where, okay, it's time to actually, invest some time, invest some money into getting those things off the lower part of the priority list and really unleash some more growth, that's where I come in. And I tend to work pretty closely with that leader. It doesn't have to be a long engagement, depending on the type of project. Some things can happen in a workshop format. Other things, if we're talking about strategic planning, that can happen over the span of a couple of weeks, typically getting the team involved there. Or sometimes there's a project that requires us to go out and do some primary research and gather some new information, and those can take a little bit longer. But typically working with that marketing leader and then whoever on their team might be appropriate, as well as their leadership team, the leadership team that they sit on. Sometimes there's cross-functional leaders it makes sense to work with as well, depending on the goal.
Mm. Are people coming to you typically with like succinct, or they have like clear revenue targets that they're trying to meet and they're bringing you in to make that happen? Or are they just kind of recognizing, oh, I feel like we could be doing better?
It's actually often the second. Both can be true. I am comfortable working in either space. But a lot of times it's the connectivity between, we're not growing as fast as we can, we have a problem that we don't fully understand, or one project in particular was just a team that had been so in the weeds for a couple of years. This particular project was actually COVID related. They'd been so focused on executing their business. They knew they hadn't taken any time to back up and do strategic planning and think bigger picture. And nobody on the team really had that experience. And so I was able to come in and bring what I knew from my experience doing that in a bigger organization, but also make it tangible and digestible for folks who'd never taken that type of approach before. And so in that case, we really did a lot of level setting on what is strategic planning and how to do SWOT analysis and really get a lay of the land of the current situation, and then helped them collectively make decisions about their priorities. So getting that, huge list of ideas under control and feel good about the prioritization and really drawing a line and saying, here's, the top, I think in that case, they had 4 or 5 top priorities, and really have the discipline to say not yet to everything below that list.
Yeah, that can be really hard, especially when you have ambitious leaders or ideas people. But it's good to kind of shift the no doesn't mean no forever. It just means not yet. Like let's focus, because if you try to do all those things, they're probably not going to happen. None of them are going to happen if you're trying to accomplish all of them. I've seen this from the CFO side, where we are constantly looking at our marketing budgets and thinking like, man, you're spending that much on marketing. Shouldn't we be getting some more out of this? So I imagine that's probably oftentimes when your role comes in. I've also seen where companies hire, like especially small businesses. I think you're working with slightly larger businesses than maybe what we work with every day, but they might not have a whole marketing department. A lot of our clients will have outsourced marketing, and marketing agencies oftentimes will sell strategy, and they'll sell, hey, we can do this for you and this for you, this for you. We'll come up with a plan. But in reality, what ends up happening is they kind of look at the business owner to develop the strategy, really, at the end of the day. So I was wondering if you could give some thoughts on investing in strategy.
Yeah, I think investing in strategy is an investment in time, an investment in energy, and then in some cases, an investment in dollars. And I think for me, when I think about that investment, it really is about taking a little bit of time to back up, slow down, get out of the day to day, and think about the business from a bigger picture. I think the benefit of bringing somebody in from the outside can be twofold. One, they might have expertise that doesn't exist on the team, right? Experience doing that. But also, they can bring in an outside perspective. that, when you're in the middle of your own business, it can be difficult to see everything and to have an objective point of view, or to hear what's going on really from the full team. And so that external point of view can be valuable as well. I like to work pretty closely and kind of get my hands dirty, if you will, and really get in and get underneath what's going on in a business, understand where money is currently being spent. To your point, where is the marketing budget being spent? It's incredibly difficult to measure marketing ROIs. And so, yes, that question comes up very, very frequently of, do we really need all these tactics? Why are we spending all of this money? And so being able to have a full team in that case, including the CFO, be part of an assessment of where are we at in our business today? What are our goals? What are all the levers that we can pull to achieve those goals? And doing some prioritization. If you can get to a data-driven version of that prioritization, even better. So I worked with a client recently that had a lot of different hypotheses about why certain locations, this was a healthcare business, why certain of their locations were doing well and others were not doing as well. And those hypotheses about how they were spending their marketing dollars were causing some challenges around the leadership table. The CFO was asking certain questions. The CEO was asking certain questions, right? And the marketing team didn't have the time or the expertise to really dig in and take a data-driven approach. So that's where I came in and was able to take a data analysis approach to look at two existing sets of data they had available to them. One was about the demographics that are around their locations. Another was things they knew about those locations. Did the doctor start with a book of patients? What was the competitive set like around the location? Things like that. Mm-hmm. And then we actually gathered new data that that was intended to understand some things about different geographic locations. And looking at all of that data and doing an analysis of what was actually driving that better performance and worse performance, what we found is that some variables within that data set that they hadn't been measuring in the past was actually the top driver. That's where the biggest problem was. And some of these other areas that they were spending money and time against weren't actually making any difference as to whether the locations were doing better or worse. And the result of that was being able to really focus their energy and their money in the space that they now have confidence is the biggest driver of their results, and save the money and save the time and save the argument really about the other variables. And so that's an example of how taking a data-driven approach can actually help the whole team feel better about the marketing spend in particular, when you lay out the hypotheses of what's doing well and what's not, and really gather some data to know what the impacts are.
I love that, because all the time I hear, I feel this is doing well. I feel like this is, there might be some signs of success, or like, well, this, there's these kind of maybe qualitative aspects that you might think that a certain part of your business is actually doing quite well. But then when you really get down to the nitty gritty of it and you do the right analysis, it can show quite different results. So usually if you're feeling like there's a problem, which it sounds like the owners of that business were feeling like there was a problem, or something wasn't working quite right, that it probably makes sense to look into it with a much more detailed approach. So that makes a lot of sense. With projects like that, are you basically handling that all internally, or are you working with other employees or contractors, or kind of what is your current status as you're just have started your business 2 years ago?
Yeah, I did a lot of the data analysis myself, and where we needed to gather new data. In that case, I have a partner that I work with who has expertise in this case, it was placing surveys and gathering that new data and analyzing that. So for me, it's a mix and match. I want to keep my costs as low as possible for my clients. And so rather than having any full-time staff, I outsource the pieces for any particular project that are beyond my expertise. And so I've done that in particular with that was a quantitative research study. I've also done it with a qualitative research study where we partnered with a research firm that is really, really talented at getting below the surface level answers that people might give in research. And this was for a big project to set brand positioning, where we were really looking to understand the benefit, the true benefit that this particular client's customers were getting by using their product and service. And so that was a pretty big project. I've also done very simple qualitative research where if you're a small business, and I have done some work with small business as well, if you're a small business, going from no research to a little bit of research can make a huge difference. And in that case, I've interviewed, folks that are either prospective clients or current clients to understand their experience and then feed that into some of the strategic marketing decisions that we're making for a client.
Mm, that's great. Yeah. I mean, I think the qualitative information, especially around branding and positioning, I imagine. I
Yep.
don't know, it's much probably be a lot harder to use the quantitative, but um, yeah, being able to get some insights into like what people are actually thinking and digging deep on that is so important because oftentimes I bet you find it's not what anybody was thinking. It's going to be some
Yeah.
other kind of value that you're delivering.
Yeah. And so if you're a small business owner out there, absolutely, like asking a few questions of your current clients, asking a few questions of the people who you think are your ideal client to understand what are the challenges they're facing in the sphere that, you can help them with. How do they think about those? And then what is their dream? What does a better tomorrow look like? And understanding those two things, both really clearly knowing where they're at today and what they're struggling with, and then where they want to get to tomorrow, that can open up a whole new set of ideas for you on, how to position your business, what your marketing should look like. And, to get started, anybody can do that. You can do that on your own. You don't have to outsource that, particularly if you've never done it before. It's a great way to get started and to go from zero insights to some can make a big difference.
Yeah. We did like just really informal, like a Microsoft form
Mhm.
questionnaire that we send out to our clients like every 6 months just to kind of check in and get a little bit of feedback. And the first time we did it, it was kind of surprising and shocking what parts of the service the clients were finding most helpful, um, to where we were like, well, why are we even doing this other thing? Like, why are we even offering this other service? Because it doesn't seem like people are valuing that service as much when it doesn't have this other piece in it. So it definitely generated some really good discussion internally about like where we need to be spending our time and what type of clients we should be looking for overall. So,
Yeah. And what you tell prospective clients about working with you, right?
mm,
I think a lot of times when we're thinking about our own messaging, it's so easy to get stuck in this is what I offer, this is what I'm excited about, this is what I want to say. And if you flip the script on that and think about what is my ideal client thinking about, struggling with, and what do they need to hear in any particular moment, those may not be the same things. In fact, they're probably not the same things, right? So thinking about what they need to hear, thinking about, putting yourself in their shoes, and then thinking about what to communicate to them can be a huge game changer from just thinking about your own business and what you want to say.
Yeah, I'd say almost every single time. Those are two different things.
Yeah.
So this is why we kind of need that outside perspective, especially when you're working with your marketing for sure. Um, well, really, really interesting. Gosh, I feel like there needs to be like growth accelerators in basically every industry. Do you specialize in any kind of particular industry?
I can work, the skill set is pretty consistent. So I can work across a variety of industries, certainly where there is a consumer focus and end user focus, products and services, healthcare. Those are some spaces I've worked more in, but the skill set I think is pretty universal.
Hmm. Yeah, that's good. Um, okay, well, I want to ask a few questions just about your business, as since you're
Yes.
growing it from just starting on your own and figuring out where you want to go with this. So tell us a little bit, like what do you see as the strategy for growing Crow and Pitcher, and where you're going to be taking it next?
Yeah, absolutely. The phase of business that we're in here at Crow and Pitcher is attracting new clients. So there are, 4 different ways that you can grow a business: selling more stuff to more people more often or for more money. And we are firmly in the to more people camp. So it's really about getting our awareness out and having more people know that our business exists and that growth acceleration is something we can help with.
Yeah, that's great. Are you planning to kind of remain the lead strategist? Are you going to bring a team on? Like, what are you thinking as far as like growing as you continue?
Um, First and foremost is, growing with me. I'd love to continue to use my experience and work directly with clients. I really enjoy getting my hands dirty and being in the business. It brings me back to my corporate roots of being able to learn about customers and clients and business challenges. And so for now anyway, that is the focus, is really allowing myself to be the lead person who is connecting with the businesses, and then using those support folks where needed for some of the back end things if necessary.
Yeah, I think that's really smart too, because the you have such a unique experience that being able to uh, be the be the person in the room with that experience is probably really valuable to your clients. So I imagine that you'll also be able to command higher prices with that level of like direct care. Being the one who actually did work at the other companies. Which I think is a really great overall like financial strategy as well. And then leveraging contractors and other strategic partners is awesome as well, because then you don't have the overhead of all the payroll and whatnot.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the bigger that you get, the more routine and less custom, the work that you can do actually becomes, right? So I think a lot of the magic is leveraging the expertise and just the experience of having seen, different businesses run in different ways. And if you grow too big or too fast, then I think you can lose that and it becomes a little more cookie cutter. So that's not the experience that I'd like to receive or I want to deliver.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, are you tracking any KPIs or metrics? They don't really have to be KPIs, but are you tracking any metrics or numbers in your business right now? And if so, what are they?
Yeah, I think, still being just a couple of years into my business, the metrics are a little bit straightforward, and that's year over year revenue growth and, year over year number of clients as well.
Yeah. I think those are fantastic. That if we're in a service-based business, if we are serving more clients, then we're probably making more revenue. But you can also probably be thinking about like, revenue per client or something like that so that you get that quality over quantity number, which I'm sure you're paying attention to. But I think those are fantastic metrics because like as right now, if you're going to be focusing on growing, continuing to grow the business, you know what you need to do.
Right.
Like you said, you
Yep.
get more clients, like you said
Absolutely.
towards the beginning. So I love that. As you've been growing this business, have there been any mindset challenges that you've encountered as you've been growing that maybe you didn't have in corporate that you're starting to see like as an entrepreneur, like, oh, okay, I didn't know this was there, and now I need to deal with this.
Oh, it's such a great question. I was lucky to have a coach right at the beginning of starting my business who had also gone out on her own. And she talked about how having your own business is the biggest personal development journey you'll ever undertake. And man, absolutely couldn't be more true. So I think for me, some of the financial mindset pieces around having income that is no longer consistent. I, for 20 plus years, got a monthly paycheck, very consistent. And so there was a lot of mindset work the first year or so, year and a half, even getting comfortable that the money in my business model is going to come in waves and in more, it comes in bigger chunks, but much less often than this regular standard monthly paycheck. And so that was a really big reframe for me, and to not get too worked up about that, and that's okay.
Yeah, when you start to realize like, no, that paycheck coming in is 100% determined on the work that I do, and I go out and sell, and I bring
Yep.
in. It is a really big jump. So that makes so much sense. Um, if I were to give you $50,000 today and tell you that you needed to spend it within 30 days in your business, what do you think you would do with that?
Wow, that is a great question. And I suppose just putting it straight in the bank for a rainy day is not the best answer. How
Some of
would
it. It's an open question, whatever you would like to do.
well, I certainly would, put some of it in the bank, because the way that I kind of got over that mindset hurdle that we talked about in your last question is by stopping the idea of what did I make monthly and start to think about what is the annual revenue, or actually profit in this case. What is the annual profit looking like? And how do I think about it in that term? Right. And so for one, it would go to help, cover that. The other thing is just thinking about investments that I can do to continue to strengthen my business. And one of the things, as we talked about earlier, that I'm continuing to work on is growing my business development skills.
Mm.
And so that's an area that I've invested in the business. And Nikki would be very excited to hear me spend that much money. But certainly, investing in growing our own skill set is not something that we have to spend that amount of money on. But I am committed to continually investing in my own development as a way to fuel growth in my business. And I think sometimes, when you just look at the dollars and cents of it all, and from the CFO perspective, right, that line item does not have a short-term ROI on it typically. But I think whether it's business coaching, leadership coaching, sales coaching, or even some of the consulting opportunities that we were just talking about, with different kinds of projects that you might do from a strategic perspective. I think those are all really good investments. And so I would definitely spend some in continuing to grow my own skills.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. I mean, I'm not going to give you $50,000, unfortunately. That would be, you know what? That's a goal that I should have is like when this podcast gets big enough, I want to give every every guest a $50,000 check. Go and do whatever you want with it. But yeah, I think personal development, there's so much truth to the entrepreneurial process that we are constantly being bombarded with new things and challenges and things that we need to overcome, and not having some of the security of, that job all the time. So that makes a lot of sense to me. Have you, as you've been growing the business or even before, what is the best piece of financial advice you've ever gotten?
The absolute best piece of financial advice I've gotten as I started my business, again, relates to that idea of the mindset of losing the monthly paycheck. And very, very early on in my business, I heard, and I really wish I remembered what podcast or I was probably a podcast, what podcast I heard it on, but I don't. But it was this, the person had entered their business in a situation similar to mine. So I was lucky to start with a severance package. I think hers might have been an inheritance, or even if it's a savings account, something. And so what I did was the first year of my business, I paid my bills and lived off of my severance. And any money that I made in my business is the money that I lived off of in year 2 of my business. So the money I made in year 1 is the money I live off of in year 2. The money I'm making here in year 2 is the money I will live off of in year 3. And this piece of advice did 2 things for me. One, it's what really helped me shift away from that mindset of, oh my gosh, but how much did I make this month? The other thing it did is it gave me a marker for when I might need to go get a job. It gave me a marker for knowing if this entrepreneurial solopreneur thing was going to work, because it gave me a runway. Let's say if 6 months through the year, it didn't seem feasible that I was going to make enough money to live off of the following year. That would start to trigger me. Okay, it's time to maybe make a different choice. So that was the best piece of advice I got. And it really did those 2 things for me in shifting that financial mindset.
Yeah, I mean, that would give you a lot of time to find something if you really needed to, or if you were just like, hey, even if you didn't end up liking it. I mean, maybe you made
Exactly.
money, but like you didn't like it. I mean, cool, go out and get a job, and then you've got a big savings account,
Right. So
ready
I
for
know
you.
not everyone is fortunate enough to start their business with something like that, but if you can think about, maybe you have to work your way up to having that kind of bit of business nest egg. But whatever it is to help you kind of break free from the mindset, because it allows you to make different choices and just feel less kind of day-to-day pressure.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, that's what cash does. I mean, it is, having, we like to say that just cash is flexibility. If you have cash in the bank, whether it's, you're solo or you have a team of 500, like if you have cash in the bank, you have a lot more flexibility than the people that the cash is at zero and you're scrambling, trying to find a loan, trying to do whatever you can. So we're always advising to have a healthy savings account in our business. Or if you want to invest it, that's fine too. But we like you to have some liquid cash, just a little financial tip there. We're kind of running up on our time, but I have one last question to ask of you. But before I ask it, I want to make sure to point people to your website if they want to go and check out more. It's Crow and Pitcher LLC.com. So you can go and check that out. So I heard you talk about podcasts earlier. What is one of your favorite podcasts right now?
Well, I just finished listening to the Strike Force 5, which was the late night talk show hosts, like the Seth Meyers and the Jimmy Fallons of the world, entertaining themselves with each other when the writers were on strike. So that is absolutely one of my recent fun faves. But of course, Nikki's podcast, the Sales Maven podcast, is also a favorite for me.
Yes. I like that there's like the entertainment podcast and then there's like the business podcast. Because usually if you're a podcast listener, you've probably got a few different genres you're listening to.
I think you got to have them both. Yeah.
Yes. I love that. And I do love it when like we have like these actors and just comedians and whatnot starting podcasts too. It's like, thank you. That's very accessible.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. Well, Melissa, thank you so much for being here. If somebody wants to get in touch with you, how can they find you?
Well, you just mentioned my website, which is a great place to find me. Also, there is a gift for your audience there. If you go to crowandpitcherllc.com/grow, you'll find a handout there that has 5 ways that you can adopt a less is more approach in your business. And you can send me a note from my website. And also would love to catch people on LinkedIn. That is my social media of choice and would love to see people there as well.
Awesome. That sounds great. Well, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate all these insights and I look forward to talking again.
Thank you, Hannah. It's been wonderful being here.
Thanks for listening to the Financial Clarity Podcast. Be sure to check out the show notes to learn more about today's episode and click subscribe on your favorite podcast app.